Hello and welcome to Take 5 with Automation World. I'm David Miller, Senior Technical Writer for Automation World. Today, I'm going to be talking about a very innovative new approach to robot programming and how it links up with other trends we've seen in this domain. So before I get into this new methodology for programming robots, let's talk about the current techniques that are in widespread use. For some time now, we've seen the programming of robots becoming easier and more intuitive in the interest of lowering barriers to adoption. At the current juncture, robotic programming is done through one of three methods: the teach method, hand guiding, and offline robot programming. So the teach method simply involves using a device called a teach pendant to guide a robot through a series of specific points of motion, which are then saved to its memory. So the robot is basically steered or controlled using this teach pendant device, which takes it through every incremental movement it will be required to make. Each one is recorded, and then it's essentially played back at a higher speed. And because the robot will be working in a highly standardized environment with products of a uniform type, this perfect repetition of motions will do perfectly well to move that line along. Hand guiding is similar, but it's done entirely using manual guidance rather than a controller like a teach pendant. So it's quite simply that if I needed the robot to move its arm like this, and then like this, and then like this, I would simply move it manually in that manner and record the movements at each juncture to lock it into the memory, and then the robot would go ahead and repeat that sequence all on its own. So those two types of programming are obviously highly intuitive, and so basically anyone could carry them out. You don't need to have much specialized technical knowledge. Offline robot programming, by contrast, involves using virtual models and may be more technically sophisticated. So we're not going to go into that in more detail today. Instead, I want to return to what we started on, a new method of programming robots that is similarly intuitive. So this method of robotic programming is from Comau via a software program called MI.RA Dexter, and it utilizes what's called a programming meta-language to take human syntax and translate it into robot syntax. So in essence, all that means is it's able to process simple voice commands. What happens is that a robotic arm outfitted with a vision system and AI, so that's an intelligent robotic arm, is simply spoken to by the user in real time. They can give it verbal commands such as to look at a certain object, touch a certain point in space, or execute a certain pre-programmed action, and it's that simple. And the robot can follow along in a coherent manner. The other thing is that it can be done completely in real time. So this software was actually recently demonstrated to program the infotainment systems on Fiat 500 vehicles. And this entails a process of literally pushing the buttons on a touchscreen in order to set it up prior to shipping the automobile out. And typically a person would just have to sit there and do that step by step. So it's tedious, it's boring, and it's probably a waste of that worker's time. Using MI.RA Dexter, by contrast, Comau was actually able to send a robotic arm in through the window of the vehicle with another smaller robot attached to it that would just sort of delicately push the buttons on the screen in order to program that infotainment system. And the really interesting thing about this is that it's a very high precision task that involves a certain amount of spatial variability. So it's a fairly impressive type of software intelligence that's required to make the robot capable of repeating it consistently. And yet this system was able to achieve it, even while utilizing such an intuitive method of programming that required very little technical expertise. So it's particularly impressive in that regard. In any case, that is about all I have for you today. But if you enjoyed this video, do keep your eyes on this space for more to come in the days ahead.